Ambassador Jinwoo Park walked slowly through the massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds formed near the top. Beings from 847 different worlds sat in the curved seats that surrounded the central speaking area. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living crystal. A few were just clouds of gas held together by energy fields. Jinwoo had seen this hall many times over the past 20 years. He had given speeches here that helped end 3 wars. He had signed treaties that saved millions of lives. Today felt different. Today might be his last time here. Captain Sarah Kim walked beside him. Her military uniform was clean and sharp. She carried a datapad with their final proposal. Behind them came Dr. Min-Ho Chen and the rest of the human team. They all knew what was at stake. The current crisis was simple to understand but hard to solve. The Krillian Empire wanted to expand into Altarian space. The Altarians had held those star systems for thousands of years. Both sides had weapons that could destroy entire planets. Both sides were getting ready to use them. Elder Zix then stood at the speaker's platform. His silver skin glowed with the patterns that showed his anger. The Altarians had ruled their part of the galaxy for longer than humans had existed. They thought this gave them the right to make all important decisions. The Krillians must withdraw immediately, Zix then said. His voice carried across the hall without any technology. We will not discuss this further. Our claim to those systems is ancient and absolute. Commander Veltar rose from his seat. The Krillian looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. His red eyes glowed as he spoke. The Altarians have grown weak. They do not use those systems. We need the resources there. We will take them with or without your permission. The hall erupted in noise. Delegates shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some banged their appendages on their desks. Others made sounds that hurt human ears. Jinwoo had seen this before. The two sides would argue for hours. They would make threats. Some smaller species would try to pick sides. In the end, nothing would change. The crisis would get worse until someone started shooting. Unless the humans helped. Jinwoo stood up and pressed the button that requested speaking time. A soft chime filled the hall. Slowly, the noise died down. Most species knew that when humans asked to speak, they usually had something useful to say. Honored delegates, Jinwoo began. His voice was calm and clear. I have studied this problem for 3 months. My team has talked to both sides. We have found a solution that could work for everyone. He activated his holographic display. A map of the disputed star systems appeared above the center of the hall. Different colors showed which areas each side claimed. The Krillians need mineral resources for their growing population. The Altarians want to protect their historical sites. Most of the systems have both. We propose a joint mining operation. The Krillians get the resources they need. The Altarians keep control of their sacred places. Both sides share the profits. Jinwoo highlighted specific areas on the map. The humans offer to supervise this operation for the first 10 years. We will make sure both sides follow the agreement. We will also provide the technology to extract resources without damaging historical sites. The proposal was detailed and fair. Human scientists had worked for months to make sure it would actually function. Human diplomats had found ways to let both sides save face. Human engineers had designed systems that would benefit everyone. Elder Zix Than looked at the display for a long moment. Then, he laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. The humans think they understand galactic politics. How amusing. Other Altarian delegates joined in the laughter. Soon, delegates from dozens of other species were laughing too. The sound filled the enormous hall. Humans have been in space for only a few hundred years. Zix then continued. We have been civilized for millennia before your species discovered fire. You are children playing at politics. This is a matter for real civilizations to decide. A delegate from the Vorthan Collective stood up. The elder is correct. Humans are useful for simple tasks. They can carry messages and fix broken machines. But this requires wisdom that only ancient species possess. Commander Veltar nodded his massive head. The humans mean well, but they do not understand the deep currents of galactic power. This is not a problem that can be solved with simple solutions. More laughter echoed through the hall. Jin Woo stood quietly at the speaking platform. His face showed no emotion. Sarah Kim's hand moved slightly toward her weapon, but she controlled herself. Doctor. Chen stared at his feet. The laughter went on for several minutes. Finally, Zixthan raised his hand for silence. Perhaps the humans should leave this discussion to their betters. Go back to your cargo ships and repair stations. Leave real decisions to civilized species. Jin Woo looked around the hall. He saw delegates from species that humans had saved from disasters. He saw representatives from worlds that humans had helped rebuild after wars. He saw beings whose lives were better because humans had shared their knowledge and resources freely. None of them spoke up for humanity. Jin Woo walked slowly to his datapad. He entered a few commands with steady fingers. Then he spoke into his communicator in clear, simple English. All human vessels, all human stations, all human personnel, he said. This is Ambassador Park. Execute withdrawal protocol 7 immediately. All diplomatic relations with galactic species are hereby terminated. All agreements and treaties are suspended. All aid and assistance programs are cancelled, effective immediately. He closed the communicator and looked up at Elder Zixthan. The humans are leaving all galactic affairs. We will not return. We wish you success in solving your problems. Without us. Jin Woo gathered his materials and walked toward the exit. Sarah, Kim, and the rest of the human team followed him. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet hall. Behind them, the silence stretched on. Finally, Commander Veltar spoke. They will be back. Humans are emotional creatures. They will calm down and return when they realize they need us. Elder Zixthan nodded. Of course they will. Where else can they go? But as the humans disappeared through the massive doors, something felt different in the hall. For the first time in decades, the galaxy's problems belonged entirely to the galaxy's older, wiser species. They would learn soon enough what that really meant. Captain Yelnara tried to reach the human cargo ship for the 5th time. Her own vessel needed medical supplies urgently. 3 of her crew were dying from vegan fever, and human ships always carried the best medicine. Human vessel Terra's Gift, please respond. She called into her communicator. This is Captain Yelnara of the merchant ship Dancing Star. We have a medical emergency and request assistance. Silence filled the communication channel. The human ship was only 2 light hours away. She could see it clearly on her sensors, but it did not answer. She tried again. Terra's Gift. We know you can hear us. Please respond. We need help. Finally, a human voice came through the speakers. It was calm and polite. Captain Yelnara, this is Captain Martinez of Terra's Gift. We are sorry, but we cannot provide assistance. We wish you safe travels. The communication ended. Yelnara stared at her screen in shock. Human ships never refused to help someone in need. Never. It was against everything they believed in. But when she tried to call back, the human ship did not answer. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human cargo ships turned away from alien ports without explanation. They would not trade, would not talk, would not help. Ships that had been reliable partners for decades suddenly acted like strangers. Station Commander Hicksrall watched the news reports with growing concern. 43 human merchant vessels had left his station in the past week. None had been replaced. His docking bays stood empty for the first time in 20 years. Sir, his aide said nervously, the Altarian grain shipments are 3 days late. The human ships usually handle backup deliveries when other shipments are delayed. Hicksrall nodded slowly. Contact the Human Merchant Guild. Ask when their next cargo run will arrive. The aide returned an hour later. His face was pale. Sir, the Human Merchant Guild says they are no longer serving non-human customers. All contracts have been cancelled. They suggest we find other suppliers. Other suppliers. Hicksral almost laughed. Human ships were faster than most alternatives. They were more reliable. They charged fair prices and delivered on time. Most importantly, they went everywhere. Human captains would fly into war zones and disaster areas that other species avoided. Who else would do that? Dr. Tex Eni worked frantically in her laboratory on Kepler Station. The Tau Ceti plague had appeared 3 days ago. Without treatment, it would spread to 17 different star systems within a month. Millions would die. She had the basic formula for the cure. Human doctors had developed it during the last outbreak 5 years ago. But she was missing several key components. The humans had never shared the complete process with other species. Have you reached Dr. Chen yet? She asked her assistant. No, doctor. All communication to human medical facilities has been blocked. They will not accept our calls. Dr. Texini felt her heart sink. Dr. Minho Chen was the galaxy's expert on plague treatment. His knowledge had saved countless lives over the years. Without his help, she could not complete the cure in time. She tried to synthesize the missing components herself. Her equipment was good, but not as advanced as human medical technology. Her first 3 attempts failed. The 4th created a substance that might work, but she could not test it safely. Time was running out. On the industrial world of New Prosperity, factory manager Doline watched his production lines shut down one by one. Human technicians had maintained the complex machinery for 15 years. They understood the systems better than anyone else. When the humans left 3 days ago, they took their knowledge with them. Can't we just read the manuals? Doline asked his head engineer. Sir, the manuals are written in human technical language. We can translate the basic words, but the concepts are too advanced. Human engineering is 50 years ahead of our own in some areas. Doline walked through his silent factory. Machines that had run perfectly for years now sat broken. His workers stood around helplessly, unable to fix equipment they had never really understood. The same thing was happening on dozens of industrial worlds. Human engineers had quietly become essential to galactic manufacturing. No one had noticed, because the humans never bragged about their importance. They just did their jobs and solved problems. Now the problems were piling up with no one to solve them. Elder Zixthan read the daily reports with growing irritation. Communication breakdowns, supply failures, technical problems, minor diplomatic incidents that would normally be resolved quickly. Where are our usual mediators? He asked his aide. The humans, sir. They always handled small disputes between member species. Their diplomatic corps has withdrawn all services. Zixthan waved a hand dismissively. Then, other species can handle these matters. How difficult can it be? His aide hesitated. Sir, there have been 17 new conflicts in the past week. 3 have escalated to actual fighting. The species involved are demanding mediation, but no one else has the humans' reputation for fairness. Nonsense. The Altarians can mediate these disputes. Sir, most of these conflicts involve the Altarians. The other species say we are too biased to serve as neutral mediators. Zix then felt his first real moment of concern. The humans had indeed handled most interspecies disputes over the past 50 years. They were trusted because they rarely took sides. They focused on finding solutions that worked for everyone. But surely other species could do the same thing. Captain Sarah Kim stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the galactic communication networks. Red indicators showed system failures across dozens of sectors. Warning messages flooded the screens. How long do we maintain the blackout? Asked her communications officer. Until Ambassador Park says otherwise, Sarah replied. We follow our orders. Ma'am, We're receiving over 3,000 emergency requests for assistance. Medical emergencies, technical failures, diplomatic crises. Sarah's jaw tightened. Every instinct told her to help. Humans had always helped when others were in trouble. It was who they were. But they had also been dismissed as children playing at politics. Log all requests, she said finally. The communication officer looked uncomfortable. Yes, ma'am. Ma. Across human space, similar conversations were happening. Human rescue ships ignored distress calls. Human medical ships turned away from plague zones. Human peacekeeping forces withdrew from conflict areas. For the first time in 50 years, humanity left the rest of the galaxy to manage without them. In the Galactic Council chambers, Elder Zeeks then called an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species attended. The agenda was long and growing longer. Order, please, Zix then called out. We have many matters to discuss. A delegate from the Cantor Republic stood up. The humans are having an emotional reaction, Zix then replied. They will calm down and resume their duties soon. But as the hours passed and the problems multiplied, several delegates began to wonder if the humans would actually return. And what would happen to the galaxy if they did not? The first shot was fired on a Tuesday. Commander Veltar watched the battle display with satisfaction as his ships destroyed an Altarian patrol group. 3 vessels turned to space dust in seconds. No survivors. Send a message to Elder Zixthan, Veltar ordered. The Krillian Empire claims the outer nebula systems. Any Altarian ships found in that area will be destroyed without warning. His communications officer hesitated. Sir, shouldn't we inform the Galactic Council first? There are procedures for territorial disputes. Veltar's red eyes glowed brighter. The procedures require human mediators. The humans have abandoned their duties. We make our own rules now. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Without human peacekeepers to maintain order, old disputes flared into open warfare. Species that had been kept apart by careful diplomacy now faced each other with weapons drawn. The Helix Consortium attacked vegan trade routes. The Crystal Collective invaded 3 small colony worlds. The Spiral Federation declared war on anyone who entered their territory. In 16 different star systems, shooting had already started. Dr. Texini collapsed at her workstation. She had been awake for 60 hours trying to synthesize the plague cure. Her latest attempt had failed, like all the others. Without human medical knowledge, she could not complete the formula. The plague was spreading faster than predicted. It had already reached 7 systems. 15 million people were infected. The death count rose every hour. Doctor, her assistant said softly, we've received reports from the outer colonies. The infection has mutated. It's now resistant to the basic treatments we do have. Dr. Texini stared at her failed experiments. Tubes of useless chemicals mocked her from the laboratory table. The human doctors could have solved this problem in days. She had been trying for 2 weeks with no success. She thought about Dr. Chen's last research paper. It had mentioned a theoretical treatment for plague mutations. But the paper only covered basic concepts. The actual methods were apparently considered too advanced for non-human scientists. How arrogant that had seemed at the time. Now she understood that it might have been simple truth. Station Commander Hicks Ral reviewed his supply reports with growing panic. Food shipments were 3 weeks behind schedule. Medical supplies had run out completely. Spare parts for critical systems were nowhere to be found. Sir, the Altarian grain merchant wants to charge us triple the normal price, his aide reported. He says, human competition was keeping prices artificially low. Triple price for food that was half the quality of human products. Hicks Ral had no choice but to agree. His station's 40,000 residents needed to eat. What about the medical supplies? He asked. The Krillian Pharmaceutical Company demands payment in advance. Full amount. No credit terms. Hicks Ral felt his savings account draining away. Human suppliers had always offered reasonable credit terms. They understood that stations sometimes faced temporary cash flow problems. Other suppliers did not care about such things. Across the galaxy, economics that had worked smoothly for decades began to break down. Human merchants had connected different regions, carried goods between species that did not trust each other, and provided backup services when local suppliers failed. Without that network, trade routes collapsed. Prices skyrocketed. Essential goods became impossible to find. Elder Zix then faced his first real crisis as the Altarian Confederacy began to fracture. Young Altarians were openly questioning their leader's decision to insult the humans. "The humans offered us a reasonable solution," said Junior Elder Mortain. "We rejected it out of pride. Now we are at war with the Krillians, and losing badly." "The humans were presumptuous," Zix then replied. "They do not understand the complexities of ancient civilizations." "What complexity?" "The Krillians want resources. We want to protect our sacred sites." The human proposal protected both interests. Instead, we chose to fight a war we cannot win. And other junior elders nodded agreement. The younger generation had worked closely with humans for decades. They knew what humanity brought to galactic civilization. Their elders had forgotten. "Perhaps we could contact Ambassador Park," suggested Junior Elder Kexara. "Apologize for our words and ask them to reconsider." "Absolutely not," Zix then declared. "The Altarian Confederacy does not apologize to children. We will solve these problems ourselves." But privately, Zix then was beginning to worry. The war was going badly. The Krillians had better weapons and more ships. Without human support, the Altarian military was struggling to defend even their core worlds. Maybe the humans would come back on their own when they realized how much the galaxy needed them. Captain Sarah Kim stood before a holographic map showing galactic chaos. Red zones marked active combat areas. Yellow zones showed supply failures and economic collapse. Orange zones indicated plague outbreaks and medical emergencies. 60% of known space was now marked with some kind of crisis indicator. "Ma'am," her aide said quietly, "we're receiving desperate calls from 7 different species. They're begging us to resume medical aid programs." Sarah studied the map. Each colored zone represented millions of suffering beings, people who needed help that only humans seemed able to provide. "What are Ambassador Park's orders?" she asked. "Maintain complete withdrawal until further notice." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we maintain withdrawal." But she could see the pain in her officers' faces. Humans were not built to ignore suffering. Every instinct screamed at them to help. That was what made them valuable to galactic civilization. It was also what had made other species take them for granted. Dr. Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports from his research station. The plague had now reached 14 systems. Industrial production was down 40% across 6 sectors. 3 major trade routes had collapsed entirely. "Doctor," his research partner said, "I've been running projections. If current trends continue, we're looking at galactic economic collapse within 6 months. The death toll could reach hundreds of millions." Dr. Chen set down the reports. He had helped design the withdrawal protocols. He knew they were necessary to make other species understand humanity's value. But seeing the actual consequences was harder than he had expected. His communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender was Dr. Texini, his former colleague from Kepler Station. "Dr. Chen," the recorded message began, "I know you cannot respond to this. But I want you to know that we understand now. We understand what you and your people have been doing for us all these years. I'm sorry we never appreciated it. I'm sorry we called you children. If there is any way at all, that you can find it in your hearts to help us. Millions of lives hang in the balance. I know we don't deserve your help. But please, think about it." Dr. Chen played the message 3 times. Each time, Dr. Texini's voice sounded more desperate. He thought about the plague cure sitting in his laboratory. He could transmit the formula in seconds. It would save millions of lives. But it would also teach the galaxy that humans would always come running when called, no matter how badly they were treated. Some lessons were worth learning the hard way. Commander Veltar studied casualty reports from his war against the Altarians. His forces were winning, but the victories felt hollow. Destroyed worlds produced no resources. Dead populations paid no taxes. The human proposal had offered a way to get what the Krillians needed without destroying what the Altarians valued. Now, both sides were losing everything. For the first time, Veltar wondered if the young human ambassador had been wiser than any of them realized. Ambassador Jin-Woo Park stood before the Galactic Communication Array for the first time in 6 weeks. Behind him, Captain Sarah Kim and Dr. Chen waited silently. The message they were about to send would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. Jin-Woo looked tired but determined. The withdrawal had been harder on humans than most aliens realized. Humanity's nature was to help others. Staying silent while the galaxy burned went against everything they believed in. But some lessons could only be taught through pain. "Begin transmission," Jin-Woo said quietly. Across the galaxy, communication systems lit up with an emergency broadcast. Species that had been desperately trying to contact humans for weeks suddenly heard a familiar voice speaking in calm, clear tones. "People of the galaxy, this is Ambassador Jin-Woo Park, speaking for humanity. You have been trying to reach us. You have asked for our help. You have wondered why we abandoned you in your time of need." Elder Zix Than was in his war room when the message began. Half of his territory was under Krillian occupation. His fleet was in full retreat. The proud Altarian Confederacy was collapsing. He stopped planning defensive strategies and listened. "We did not abandon you," Jin-Woo continued. "You dismissed us. You called us children, playing at politics. You laughed at our efforts to help. You made it clear that you considered us primitive and unworthy of respect." On Kepler Station, Dr. Texini paused in her futile attempts to synthesize plague medicine. The death toll had reached 23 million. Her hands shook as she listened to the human ambassador's words. "So we decided to let the galaxy's older, wiser species handle their own problems. You wanted to make decisions without human interference. We have given you that opportunity." Jin-Woo activated a holographic display that appeared on every screen in the galaxy. Statistical charts showed the complete breakdown of galactic civilization over the past 6 weeks. These are the results of 6 weeks without human participation. 43 wars have started. Industrial production has dropped by 60%. Supply chains have collapsed across 8 major trade routes. Economic systems are failing on hundreds of worlds. Commander Veltar watched the display from his flagship. The numbers were devastating, but accurate. His own empire was struggling to manage territory they had conquered. Without human logistics experts, the Krillian supply lines were falling apart. The Tau Ceti plague has killed 23 million beings. It could have been stopped in the first week with proper treatment. Instead, it continues to spread because other species cannot synthesize the cure without human medical knowledge. Dr. Texini began to cry. 23 million deaths that could have been prevented, all because her people had been too proud to treat humans as equals. Jin-Woo's voice remained calm as he continued the devastating recital. 7 species face economic collapse. 14 worlds have no functioning medical facilities. 22 star systems have lost basic communication services. Station Commander Hicks Ral watched his own station's statistics appear on the display. Critical system failures, supply shortages, social unrest. His once prosperous trading post was dying slowly, without human support. "You asked where humans had gone. We went nowhere. We have been here all along, watching, waiting, hoping you would learn." The ambassador paused. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of sadness that touched hearts across the galaxy. For 50 years, Humans have served as mediators, peacekeepers, engineers, doctors, and traders. We maintained the infrastructure that kept your civilization running. We prevented wars through patient diplomacy. We shared our knowledge freely and asked for nothing in return except basic respect. Jin Woo's image changed to show scenes from before the withdrawal. Human medical teams saving lives during disasters. Human engineers repairing critical systems. Human diplomats working through the night to prevent conflicts. We did not do these things because we were primitive or simple-minded. We did them because we believed in the value of galactic civilization. We thought that working together, all species could build something better than any of us could create alone. Elder Zix Than felt shame burning in his chest. He remembered dismissing human contributions as mere technical support. He had never realized how much of galactic civilization depended on human knowledge and dedication. But you saw our willingness to help as weakness. You mistook our patience for stupidity. You assumed that because we did not boast about our contributions, those contributions were not important. The display showed current crisis zones across the galaxy. War, plague, economic collapse, system failures, millions of beings suffering while their leaders maintained pride that was no longer worth maintaining. The galaxy is burning, Jinwoo said simply. It burns because you chose pride over cooperation. You chose ancient prejudices over practical solutions. You chose to exclude the one species that had proven its dedication to galactic peace. Captain Sarah Kim stepped forward and whispered something to the ambassador. He nodded and continued speaking. We could end this suffering. Human medical teams could stop the plague within days. Human engineers could restore your failing infrastructure. Human diplomats could negotiate peace treaties that would end these pointless wars. Hope flickered in hearts across the galaxy. Perhaps the humans would return. Perhaps this nightmare could end. But we will not return to the old system. We will not again accept dismissal and disrespect while doing the work that keeps galactic civilization alive. If you want human help, you must accept humans as equals. Jinwoo's conditions appeared on screens throughout the galaxy. Full diplomatic recognition. Equal voting rights in the Galactic Council. Formal treaties acknowledging human contributions. Respect for human methods and suggestions. These are not requests, the ambassador said firmly. These are requirements. The galaxy must choose between its pride and its survival. The transmission showed massive fleets gathering at the edges of human space. Dozens of species had sent ships, ostensibly to force human cooperation. But the fleets looked more like desperate supplicants than conquerors. Some of you have sent military forces to our borders. You apparently believe you can compel us to resume our former services. This would be a mistake. Captain Sarah Kim activated tactical displays showing human defensive capabilities, advanced weapons, shielding technology, ship designs that other species had never seen before. Humans are not the primitive species you believed us to be. We have simply chosen not to use our full capabilities for military purposes. We preferred to build rather than destroy. But we are fully capable of defending ourselves. The defensive systems were impressive but not overwhelming. What was overwhelming was the implication that humans had been holding back their full technological abilities for decades. However, we prefer cooperation to conflict. If you choose to work with us as equals, we will gladly help repair the damage of these past weeks. The choice is yours. Jinwoo deactivated the displays and looked directly into the transmission cameras. To Elder Zix Than of the Altarian Confederacy. To Commander Veltar of the Krillian Empire. To all species who called us children. We are waiting for your answer. But we will not wait forever. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, leaders stared at blank screens in stunned silence. The humans had laid out the situation with devastating clarity. Pride or survival. Ancient prejudices or practical cooperation. The choice should have been simple. But pride dies hard, even when civilizations are dying with it. Elder Zixthan sat alone in his war room, surrounded by reports of military defeats and system failures. His people were suffering. His civilization was crumbling, all because he had called humans children playing at politics. He reached for his communicator with a trembling hand. It was time to make the hardest decision of his long life. It was time to admit he had been wrong. Elder Zixthan's ship approached the human fleet at the edge of Earth's solar system. Behind him came vessels from 47 different species. They were not coming as conquerors. They were coming as supplicants. The human fleet was impressive but not threatening. Clean white ships arranged in defensive formations. No weapons were powered. But their mere presence sent a clear message. Humanity would defend itself if attacked. "This is Elder Zixthan of the Altarian Confederacy requesting permission to speak with Ambassador Park," he transmitted. His voice shook slightly. In 3,000 years of life, he had never felt so humbled. "Permission granted," came the calm reply. "Please dock at Luna Station." Luna Station was humanity's diplomatic center. Zixthan had visited it many times over the decades, usually to dismiss human concerns or demand human services. Today felt very different. Ambassador Jinwoo Park waited in the main conference room. He was not alone. Captain Sarah Kim stood at his right. Dr. Chen sat nearby, with a data pad full of medical information. Other human officials filled the remaining seats. But it was Commander Veltar's presence that surprised Zixthan most. The Krillian commander sat across from the humans, with his head bowed in what appeared to be shame. "Elder Zixthan," Jinwoo said formally. "Commander Veltar, thank you for coming." Zixthan struggled to find words. Protocol demanded formal greetings and diplomatic courtesies, but the galaxy was dying while they spoke. Every hour of delay cost more lives. "Ambassador Park," Zixthan began, then stopped. He had prepared a careful speech about mutual cooperation and shared responsibilities. Looking at Jinwoo's patient face, those words seemed inadequate. Instead, he did something no elder of the Altarian Confederacy had ever done. He knelt. "I was wrong," Zixthan said simply. "I called your people children. I dismissed your wisdom. I mocked your efforts to help us. I was wrong about everything." Commander Veltar stood and moved to kneel beside the Altarian elder. "As was I. We treated humans as servants rather than partners. We took your help for granted and gave nothing in return except contempt." Jinwoo gestured for both aliens to rise. But Zixthan remained kneeling. 23 million beings have died from the plague that your doctors could have stopped. Millions more suffer in wars that your diplomats could have prevented. This blood is on my hands because of my pride. The blood is on all our hands, Veltar added. I started a war instead of accepting a reasonable compromise. My people are starving while I try to hold territory we cannot manage. Doctor. Chen stood and activated a holographic display. The plague can still be stopped. I have prepared medical teams to deploy immediately. We can have treatment centers operational within 72 hours. 72. O leading tenses. Aloud of Yuning. Hope flickered in Zixthan's ancient eyes. You would help us? After everything we said and did? Helping others is what humans do, Jinwoo replied. But the old system is dead. If we work together, it must be as equals. Captain Sarah Kim stepped forward with formal documents. The new Galactic Cooperation Charter. Equal representation for all species. Binding agreements to respect each other's contributions. Formal recognition of human knowledge and capabilities. Zix then read through the documents quickly. They were fair but comprehensive. Humans would have the same rights as any founding species of the Galactic Council. Their suggestions could not be dismissed without proper consideration. Their contributions would be acknowledged and valued. I accept these terms completely, Zix then said without hesitation. The Altarian Confederacy recognizes humans as equals and pledges to honor all provisions of this charter. Commander Veltar nodded agreement. The Krillian Empire also accepts. We renounce our territorial claims and agree to the resource-sharing arrangement originally proposed by Ambassador Park. Other species representatives stepped forward one by one. The Vorthan Collective, the Helix Consortium, the Crystal Federation. Each formally accepted human equality and the new cooperation charter. Jinwoo smiled for the first time in weeks. Then let us begin rebuilding. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human medical ships launched toward plague zones within hours. Dr. Chen personally led the team to Kepler Station, where Dr. Texini waited with desperate hope. Dr. Chen, she said as he arrived, I cannot tell you how grateful. We can talk later, Chen interrupted gently. Right now, we have lives to save. The human medical team worked with incredible efficiency. They had the cure synthesized and ready for mass production within 6 hours. Distribution began immediately. The plague that had terrorized 17 star systems for weeks was contained within 3 days. Dr. Texini watched human doctors training local medical teams in advanced treatment techniques. They shared their knowledge freely, holding nothing back. Why? She asked Dr. Chen during a brief break. Why do you share everything when other species guard their secrets so carefully? Chen smiled tiredly. Because knowledge grows when it is shared. Medicine only works if everyone can use it. We are stronger together than apart. Meanwhile, human engineers spread across the galaxy to repair critical infrastructure. Station Commander Hicks Rahl welcomed them back to his facility with tears in his eyes. I thought we could manage without you, he admitted. I was a fool. You were learning, replied Chief Engineer Park. We all learned something important these past weeks. Within a month, trade routes were restored and improved. Human innovations made supply chains more efficient and reliable than ever before. Economic systems stabilized as human financial experts helped design fairer and more stable markets. But the most important work happened in the diplomatic chambers. Ambassador Jinwoo Park was elected as the first Supreme Chancellor of the new Galactic Council by unanimous vote. His first act was to establish the Interspecies Cooperation Institute, dedicated to preventing future conflicts through understanding and respect. Elder Zixthan served as Vice-Chancellor, working closely with humans to develop new diplomatic protocols. Commander Veltar reformed the Krillian military into a peacekeeping force that worked alongside human peacekeepers. The resource-sharing agreement in the disputed systems became a model for other territorial disputes. Joint operations that benefited all parties replaced zero-sum conflicts. Dr. Chen established medical exchange programs that paired human doctors with alien specialists. Knowledge flowed freely between species, advancing medicine for everyone. Captain Sarah Kim created integrated defense forces that combined human tactics with alien technologies. The new fleet was stronger than anything any single species could have built alone. 6 months after the withdrawal, galactic civilization was healthier than it had ever been. Not because humans dominated other species, but because all species finally worked together as equals. Jinwoo stood in the rebuilt assembly hall, looking out at delegates from over 800 species. They were debating a proposal to establish new colonies in the Andromeda Galaxy. The discussion was spirited but respectful. The motion passes, Jinwoo announced after the vote. Exploration teams from 23 species will begin scouting missions next month. As the delegates filed out, Elder Zixthan approached the human ambassador. Do you ever regret it? The Altarian asked. The withdrawal. I mean, all the suffering that could have been prevented. Jinwoo considered the question carefully. I regret the suffering. But I do not regret teaching the galaxy that cooperation must be based on mutual respect. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. Zixthan nodded slowly. The galaxy is better now. Stronger. More united. We learned to value what we had taken for granted. We all learned Jinwoo replied. Humans learned that sometimes you must step back to move forward. Other species learned that strength comes from working together, not from dominating others. As they walked through the station corridors, they passed members of dozens of different species working side by side. Human engineers collaborated with Krillian technicians. Altarian philosophers debated with human ethicists. Young beings from various worlds learned from each other in integrated educational programs. What would you have done? Zeeks then asked. If we had refused to change? If pride had mattered more than survival? Jinwoo paused at a viewing port that showed the stars beyond. Humans would have survived. We would have built our own civilization and been content with it. But the galaxy would have been a much smaller place. The elder looked at the same stars and imagined a universe where species remained isolated by pride and prejudice. A galaxy where cooperation was impossible because respect was absent. Thank you, Zix then said quietly, for not giving up on us. Jinwoo smiled. Humans never give up on anyone. That is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. No, Zix then replied, watching a mixed crew of human and alien engineers repair a space station together. That is simply what makes you human. And the galaxy is better for it. The stars shone down on a galaxy that had learned to work together. It had been a hard lesson, paid for in suffering and pride. But it was a lesson worth learning. Humanity had quit the talks, and the entire galaxy had held its breath. Now they could all breathe freely again.